Hello, and welcome to the Little Things podcast. That was my impression of Bethany Warner, since she's the one that always starts our podcast off. However, Bethany is knee-deep in tweens and getting ready for VBS right now. So she is on the other side of the building, building a set with a bunch of tween girls. So we're all going to say a little prayer for Bethany. They were doing great. They were working on a coral reef right now. But we're super excited today. Even though Bethany's not here with us, we have Heather Fox, who's joining me today. And I'm Rachel Hines, like the other half of the Bethany crew, not the twin sister Rachel, the other Rachel. And Heather Fox is joining me today from Nature Explorer and Dimensions. And we're going to talk a little bit about something that Bethany and I feel very strongly about, and learning and outdoor play for children. How are you, Heather?
Doing well. It's
Good.
A beautiful day out here in Nebraska.
And Heather even walked here.
I did.
I'm impressed. I love how you live what you teach. That's amazing. Heather, do you mind just telling us a little bit about the background of Nature Explorer and / Dimensions?
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, we've been lucky enough to be in Lincoln, Nebraska for more than close to 50 years, where teachers were interacting intentionally with children and learning how children learn by watching. So they were observing children in the classroom, they were noticing, they were asking questions. And as they did this, they started to notice some things about the way children learn outdoors. And noticed that they were learning in some ways better outside than they were learning indoors. And that there were some components that went into setting up spaces that made learning outdoors even better. And so
that's amazing.
I
didn't really even ask prior to asking you that. I didn't know. I kind of always thought Dimensions was kind of nature based. I didn't know it came from that observation. That's super cool.
I think it was always child focused and observation focused and research based. But it was through the research that they were doing that they noticed that nature was a good idea.
Huh, cool.
Yeah, and once they did, we just couldn't not take it out to the rest of the world and try to help other people see that as well. And so probably 20 years ago, that kind of work happened from the teachers' observations and then some training and some outreach into other parts of the country.
Awesome. And so that's where Nature Explorer came from.
Yeah, it started out in ed programs, and now it's a 501c3 national nonprofit, and it's going all over the country and in different parts of the world.
I was going to say, I think it's even global a little bit, isn't it?
Yeah,
What an awesome outreach. I'm just fascinated by that. So you learn something new every day, because I always connect Dimensions with that nature-based learning. And I just thought it was Dimensions that came out of Nature Explorer, not the other way around. Very cool. Yeah. So tell us about your history when did you jump in and join this crew?
Yeah, well, I was also very lucky because I came back to my hometown. I was away from Lincoln for a while and found a place for myself where two of my favorite things matched or combined, which is infants and toddlers and the natural world. So I was helping with some training at the Children's Museum and got to know some of the educators at Dimensions, and was able to join their team about 15 years ago, and just loved it the entire time.
Oh, that's amazing. So what's your role with Nature Explorer and Dimensions now?
It's generally training and helping to design outdoor spaces.
Fabulous. Well, I am super glad that you're here, because we've had, both Bethany and I have very strong opinions on what children need and maybe what they have too much of that they shouldn't have. Number one being screens. We know that screens are really everywhere right now, even in the hands of our young ones, and maybe not enough time in nature. So I can't wait to visit with you a little bit and get your ideas and just get our podcast is called The Little Things, because it's like, what are those small little changes, little things that we can do to make a difference for our children as they're growing, and really nurture them and observe them and recognize that every child is unique. Where did your passion for working with children? You said children's children come from.
Yeah.
So you said you have a heart for those infants and toddlers.
Right. Well, I was kind of backing up into those screens for just a minute, I was
Sure.
thinking a little bit about where we've come to now with even with our babies and toddlers, but also our preschool children and our elementary children. And we've been focusing on screens more and more and more. And as nature can be, I think it's the antidote to this in some ways. I think that's the word I want to use. But a lot of my worry is about that instant gratification piece. And that happens for all of us, not just our infants and toddlers, not just our preschoolers, but our teachers and ourselves, where we're just so used to getting the answer at the click of a finger.
Yeah.
And we spend very little time in that wondering stage. Well, I wonder why it does this, or even having the conversation between the two of us. I wonder why.
Yeah.
Because we have all the ways to find out the answer without wondering.
Yeah.
And so that's the piece that really brings me into nature, is the wondering, the being curious and taking the time to just travel through the curiosity and not answering the questions quickly for ourselves or for anyone else. And so I think I found that in nature when I was really young. I noticed that when I was laying on my belly in the grass, I could find things and notice things all on my own without having to have the answers or ask anyone questions.
Right.
And so that piece has always brought me some, it just has helped me to relax and understand myself better. And so when I have the opportunity to bring this young age of children that are already in that, what is this world?
Everything is amazing. Yes.
Yeah. What is this ant? What is this airplane? What is this? And to have that combination of that young wondering and nature there's just nothing like it.
And to get to facilitate that and observe it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Watch.
Really just observe it. It's amazing.
That's incredible. And we forget as adults, we become so analytical, I think, and have to have those answers. We lose that sense of awe and wonder. And we were many of us at Messiah were at the Concordia Educators Conference in the fall, and Dr. Bull, who is he's the president of the university, he had a keynote that was all about awe and wonder and helping children find it again, because there's so much that our busyness, the answers that are always given to us. What a great way to help nurture lifelong learning is by finding joy in wondering and awe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Incredible.
And I'm just so curious. I know that teachers who teach in the natural world are able to both facilitate that sort of traveling through awe and wonder and be in it some themselves.
Sure.
And I wonder how we could continue to provide environments for teachers where they could spend more time there.
Yeah.
And know that it's okay not to have all the answers.
And just explore and not to feel like you have that checklist. So when, I think as a mom, I always talk about 20-year-old Rachel that was a new mom and raising a first child. And 20-year-old Rachel didn't have any answers.
Right.
Just thought she did, But then you grow and you learn a little bit. But I know as the mom of four, I'm always like, okay, I want to do the best by my children. And I hear something like this. And yes, this is the world I want them to live in. I want them to just love exploring God's creation, everything. But then I get overwhelmed myself. What is that first small step for a teacher or for a parent to really, maybe your child's been on screens most of the time and you want to step away from that. You want to start. What kind of advice do you have? What's a first small step to kind of enter that natural learning environment?
Yeah, there's an activity that there's quite a few activities listed on our website. I think there's 13. It's a Families Club kit. And one of the activities, I'll tell you how to get there in a second after I tell you the activity, but is something so easy. What is beautiful to you? And so why not just do it yourself, maybe without your children if you need to, and walk around and notice, maybe with your significant other or your best friend, what's beautiful to you? What do you see out here that just engages you? And take time to just wander around and notice those things. And it really works with any age group. If it's a young infant, you're labeling things and you're noticing and you're watching where their eyes go and maybe helping them to touch or smell or feel something different. And then older children that are running through the trees, okay, let's see, what do you think is beautiful? And allow them to show you. And that's just one small step to sort of get to see the benefits so quickly.
Yeah. Oh, and what a simple thing. I was just sharing with Heather that we had our granddaughter for a lot of the weekend and that I love to go on walks with her. And now I want to like rewind and I'm like, oh my gosh, I could totally do this because her eyes and that little finger would point and catch all of those different things. Oh, that would be so simple to do.
And you don't have to use the word beautiful.
Yeah.
You could use any word that
interesting.
That works for you. I sometimes joke that even if you're in the dating life, maybe that's a good first date, right?
A good little litmus test.
See what someone cares about.
Yeah.
It's nice. And so that's one step. And those are all at natureexplore.org. And you can just download the Families Club kit and get a few ideas on what you could do with your child. Or if it's a teacher, they could use those with their students.
That's awesome. And especially this time of year where families, educators who are working during the summer love to be outside. Just what a perfect little toe dip into the water of really being out in nature.
Yeah, because a lot of times we'll take our children to the park.
Yep.
And let them climb, and we'll keep them safe.
Sure.
And maybe we might climb around with them a little bit, but it's not as much of a connecting activity. It's more of a adult watching child moving their body. Also important.
Yeah.
But these finding ways to connect with people and the natural world at the same time, valuable.
Yeah.
So that would be one step.
Oh, I love that.
And another would just be to swap out some things that are toys or tools or decorations, whatever you might be. Swap out some more plastic items for natural items.
Sure.
That's an easy, bring some natural items into your classroom, into your home, and start noticing and caring about those things as well. That's
Bethany and I were, and I should have done my research so I could say it correctly, but 1,000 Hours Outside. There's the website, and we were listening to a podcast where the creator of that website was on, and she was talking about how when her children were young, she recognized everybody was overwhelmed. They were on the go all the time. Everything was planned, and I can't remember if it was a suggestion she had or how it started, but just going to the park. So she started taking her kids just to the park and then stopped taking toys and different things and letting them just find sticks and rocks. And all of a sudden, the whole family's anxiety level went down. Everything changed. And I feel like it was 11 years ago that started. And now their whole family, it was the small little swapping of things, maybe bringing a snack and just getting used to something totally different.
Yeah.
What do you recommend in an environment, like at home? I know 20-year-old Rachel is compared to the educator in her 40s now. My home looks very different for what I feel like children need. There were probably a lot of plastic toys that made lots of sounds 20 some years ago. What kind of materials, either in a classroom or a home, are beneficial that really help kind of spark that curiosity in children? Yeah.
Well, in the early childhood field, we always refer to things as open-ended natural materials, but what does that mean for a parent or for someone who's not in early childhood? It just means that the materials don't have a prescribed outcome.
Sure.
So materials that a child could use or adult could use their imagination on. It's not a plastic apple. It's maybe a pine cone. And the pine cone could be a mug. It could be an apple. It could be a hairbrush. It allows for a person to put their own ideas on something and share who they are with the rest of the world instead of being told what something is.
Sure.
I think it's kind of another example of allowing or encouraging people to be individuals and really valuing who they are.
Sure.
Because when we know that this stick actually is a magic wand, to a child, then we know a little bit more about what the child's thinking about.
Yeah, where their imagination is.
Yeah, what they care about.
Yeah.
And what they're imagining.
And maybe it's a hammer for another child. And, just when you were even talking about the activity, what is beautiful to you, I was just immediately brought into my mind, like walking with my family, and probably I can see my girls and I probably seeing trees and flowers and maybe the creek that kind of runs by our house. And I can see my husband and my son focusing on cars, like things that, because the difference in our brains and what we find beautiful. But it's the same thing. If you have materials, you'd be able to really identify different little personalities at such a young age, how they use them.
Yeah.
I love that.
Another tool for observing and getting to know someone, right?
So when you talk about, because I know observation is huge with the staff at Dimensions and just getting, what are some good ways for educators maybe to do that kind of simple observation, but also families and parents, like as they're really wanting to get to know their children better and get curious about their own children?
Yeah. I guess you would think about, well, what's my favorite way to communicate and how do I collect information the best?
Sure.
And try it that way first. Of course, for me, photographs, because I'm pretty visual, photographs do work well for me to capture, and then I can write a little bit about what happened. And then once you've started to observe in the way that you feel most comfortable, then try some other things.
Sure.
We have teachers who use sketches or visual note-taking to tell a story about what the children are doing. So they might be in the block area and they're drawing the structure that they see the child drawing or building. Or they might draw the pathway that the child took through the Nature Explorer classroom to get to the next thing. We had a teacher who, 2 children were working on a project where it had a fulcrum, and it was kind of a teeter-totter sort of situation with a piece of wood and some other things. And he drew almost in a comic strip what happened next in order to really describe what he saw.
How cool.
There's just a lot of ways for us to share the learning that we're seeing happen for others.
Well, and I'm just thinking, as a parent, I'm the worst at scrapbooks.
There's so much pressure.
But doing something like that, if you're just kind of being present and watching and observing your child and doing that kind of note-taking, what a cool scrapbook. That would be so meaningful, like to compile that all as they get older. And what a great gift.
Yeah, and even if it isn't about the final, because my daughter certainly doesn't have a final beautiful scrap. So I'm giving myself some grace on that one. Even if the notes don't go into a scrapbook for them to look at in the future, when you're drawing what they're doing, that's valuable in the moment. Oh, yeah. Because they're like, what I'm doing is important.
Yeah.
And we know it from photographs, right? When we take a picture, children often are like, yes, I did a good job because I got my picture taken. But what kind of message could we send if we're like actually writing down the work that they're doing and drawing a picture of their magnificent structures that they're creating?
And what a way to teach them to do the same, maybe. To explore a different kind of recording. If they can't record with words yet, then they can draw a picture. Wow, I love that.
Yeah.
That's super cool. So now, because kind of the educator side, I know you're working closely with us. We're blessed to have a certified nature explorer outdoor classroom, and that's gorgeous. Mrs. Timian and Mr. Timian started it, I think, a little over a decade ago. And we're blessed with so much great land at Messiah. And then we're working on another one for our toddlers. And I know you're going to walk alongside us and help us set that up. But it makes me think of all the money my husband and I have spent on outdoor equipment at home that has cost a lot and gotten used for a weekend. And then it becomes a place for our kids to collect their pine cones and their sticks and create little houses that they had there already before we went to Sam's Club and spent a bunch of money on metal and plastic. What kind of advice do you have for setting up like that outdoor or like nature-based learning space, indoors or outdoors. I was going to say outside and outdoors at the same time. We're going to make up words here. Bethany's gone and everything goes out the window.
Well, your Nature Explore classroom is already just amazing.
It's so
with
beautiful.
The plant material and the wooden ways of dividing, and so it's already in such a good place for learning. And then there's always the addition of natural loose parts, like we were talking about, and tools for people to use outdoors. So I think that's some of it is we have these beautiful outdoor spaces, and then all we get to do then is spend time in them and see where they take us.
Yeah.
And just like you had been mentioning about the just find some things and use them. Once you see children using those materials, what can I add to make it even richer, another experience? What kinds of questions can I ask? So that's part of it. Now, the research that I was telling you about really did lead us to seeing that designated areas, much like your indoor classrooms where you'd have a space for, large muscle building or a space for art to happen, helps to sort of scaffold the learning. It helps for teachers, mostly teachers, but also children, to develop kind of a map of their space and an understanding where things belong. And so that's one of my recommendations for folks is even in their backyard, if they could have a few different options. Is there a place for children to do artwork or a place for children to climb and run? And once you give them a few choices, the play changes.
Yeah.
And then they don't have to keep all the art material in the art area, but it's a nice place to put things back and know it's going to be there when you come out again.
Well, and just to encourage that time outdoors, the thing that you could be doing inside. I always laugh because I think my parents, and I think many people probably say the same about I think my parents were those new cool parents now, way back I was a child of the late 70s, early 80s, and we were outside. I grew up in Minnesota, and if it was cold, we were outside. If it was hot, we were outside. And those are my favorite memories, building some incredible snow structures. But in the summer, we had an old tractor tire filled with sand. It was our sandbox, but man, we had all kinds of little creations that happened in there. My dad's huge garden. We were allowed to roam and run, and flowers that we were allowed to pick the petals. I think what a blessing to have that be our playground was the outdoors, and between the houses, the rows of houses, all the water would run down. So we had this wonderful little swamp, to think about all the way that my brain was allowed to grow, just exploring outdoors during that time and getting nice and dirty and nice and exhausted.
Yeah, and people want to know that what they're doing for their children is building strong brains, and it's good for them as far as individuals and their learning, and so you can see, and we have documented the learning happening for children in spaces like this, in all areas, language and literacy, math skills, of course, science skills would be involved, but really a child can develop holistically outside. We know that from our own experience, but we also know that from research. Which is incredible.
Because you do a lot with research, what do you see? And I guess I don't know if this has been kind of observed or not, but a child coming from maybe an environment where they haven't been outdoors or in nature as much, and then going into that environment, what kind of changes do you see in that child?
Well, there's definitely children, if they haven't been able to explore on their own, it's almost more difficult if they've been in a classroom where they've been told what to do, even if it was an indoor classroom and they didn't have that opportunity to explore the materials as well. There'll be a little bit more of an adjustment period getting outdoors and knowing what to do when you're outside.
Sure.
Just like if I didn't ever go outdoors with my family, how would I know what to do?
Sure.
And so it takes a little bit of time to adjust. But overall, with teachers and with children, we've found that children who spend time in these nature-rich environments that are different than the traditional playground are reported to be happier, less impulsive, more creative, and more able to self-regulate once they've had some time in the outdoor space. And children adjust pretty quickly. It's exciting to be able to be in a new place and find all of the new amazing things that are happening. And teachers are loving it because they don't have to create those new things. When we're inside, we often put up a new, visual,
Sure.
or we bring new materials in. But in the natural world, especially those of us who get to experience seasons, which you did in Minnesota and I certainly did in Nebraska, it changes over time, and teachers don't have to worry about changing up the materials because the leaves
just
fall.
does it naturally.
Yeah. And so those are a couple things that I know about children getting adjusted to the natural world.
Right. Well, and so many different trainings as educators that you go to, they talk about, especially when you're talking about regulation or self-regulation and anxiety and all of those big things that are talked about a lot now, where they talk about just being in nature for a short period of time or looking at nature and how that can calm your body and help relieve anxiety. And if we're actually in nature, it stands to reason that we are gonna be a lot more regulated and all of the other wonderful things.
Now, you mentioned a little bit about being able to have children interact with God's creations. And so what have you been seeing with the children here and the way that they are with nature, or the way the teachers are here with nature?
Oh, well, we are so blessed to have so much outdoor space. And we have a great playground, like a kind of a traditional playground, if you will, that has equipment. So it allows them, it kind of makes me think more of like an outside gym, if you would, but we kind of chuckle because it's beautiful and it's, but the kiddos are always along the edge in the mulch, looking for the roly-polies, building houses for the roly-polies, using the mulch to create whatever their imagination is speaking to, or in the sandbox, wanting to create there. And teachers and children, I would say both, their favorite place is to be in that outdoor classroom, because you get down there, they're exploring. There's just a sense of calm. You have the trees, and it is a beautiful, beautiful space, because old trees, there's a great field, a farmer's field, and the farmer stops and kind of shows off his combine during harvest. And so, and the chance to see, just like you said, the change of seasons, a great walking path. We have so much, and I think it's the hardest is when they can't be outdoors or exploring as much. Those winter seasons where that time has to be a little bit more limited is the challenge, because that's where they really thrive, is just being able to be independent and still have, we always say children need some boundaries to feel safe and protected. And they have, of course, those boundaries to keep them safe when they're in that outside environment. But where things aren't as defined as, this isn't the cup that goes with the kitchen set. This is the cup I'm creating out of this rock or whatever it is. I personally love to watch it, and I hear from our teachers all the time how blessed we are to have these outdoor spaces.
You really are. Yeah, and I'm thinking about those cold winters or those rainy days, and the way that we can, if you're a parent and you're listening and you're like, I really want to support this to go forward for my own child or for my school, one of the things you can really help with is clothing, right? Having the right clothing for the right season for folks. If we are able to bring our own children ready with boots and hats and such, and maybe even just bringing an extra set for somebody else in case they forgot theirs or they need a pair.
That's a great idea.
Right? Just pick up an extra set of boots if you see one and bring them along so that the next child that might have forgotten theirs at home could get it out. You
may have been the one, I say this quote all the time, and I always say, I don't remember who said it, so I can't really attribute it, but it wasn't me. But that there's no bad weather, there's just bad clothing. But I don't think bad clothing, but it's really true that if we dress appropriately, our kids can enjoy. And how much fun is that pile of snow?
Right. And if we can also dress appropriately to teach out there, it makes it so wonderful. To have long underwear under our, or snow pants on to play with children in the snow. Yeah, that would be another thing, that if I could make a change in our world, there's so many places that we could make change, but wouldn't it be great if all of our educators also could be ready for the weather?
Yeah.
And not have to be an expense for them. Just
Sure.
the, extra snow
Ready
pants
to
and
go out,
boots
yeah.
and ready to be able to play and be in the elements with children.
And enjoy it, because if we really think about it, I'm one that likes to probably complain about the weather more than I should.
Well, you want to be comfortable, right?
Yeah.
When you're doing your job.
But I also, we really live in a pretty mild area of the country where we don't have that drastic cold or drastic heat for the bulk of the year. Like, we have, most of the time we can be outside, even as long as we're dressed appropriately, and enjoying the outside. The wind, that's the question, Heather. How can you be out in the wind and teach and help children to enjoy the outdoors?
I vividly remember this toddler who, we had a very windy space, and she would go out and the wind was not her friend.
I think that was me.
That was you as a child.
That was maybe me now. I just act like a toddler in the wind.
Well, I mean, we do have to be aware that different things children are going to act differently in all of these different environments. And we do need to be ready for the person who can't, the wind is just too much.
Yeah.
And how do we help them, stay in cover, maybe wearing a hat? For me, if I can just keep my hair out of my face during wind, I feel a lot better.
Yeah.
But when my hair is all over in my face, I can hardly think. And so just observing children, seeing what they need, and then helping them to acclimate. I think our bodies also get so used to the air condition that when at the beginning of a hot season, like today, it's not even very hot. And I was hot outside, but in 2 months,
it's going to be cool. Today's going to be, remember back.
My body will totally be able to handle it. But you have to be outside in order to acclimate. Otherwise, you're just used to air conditioned heat.
Well, and I think that's one of those things that for us, we can recognize some of those things. But then when we see a child, because I think my husband loves to drive with the windows down. He loves having and I love windows open, but I have long hair. And if it's not pulled tight in a bun, it's whipping in my face and it's giving me a headache. And my husband has no hair. So he enjoys it. I don't so much because I can't see anything. I've got hair in my mouth. But even just taking that experience as the adult, and if I have a child who's got Rachel hair outside and who's miserable when she goes, maybe a simple braid or something so that hair isn't in her face would be enough to help her have an enjoyable experience. Just to kind of think about those things that affect us and how they can affect the children too.
Yeah, I don't like wearing gloves because I don't want to be too far away from whatever it is. So when I'm prepping food, I like to use my hands as much as possible. When I'm outside, I don't like to have gloves on because I'm too far away from whatever it is I'm holding. And surely there's children like that that want to be in that sensory experience. And we're like, keep your gloves on. Keep your gloves on. They're like, it doesn't feel good. And it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay for them to want to be close to the cold or the sand or whatever that is.
Well, and I know I can speak as an adult myself and as an educator that I think sometimes the biggest roadblock for my own children, or even probably, if I'm being completely honest, as when I was a teacher in a classroom, maybe even for my children in my classroom, was me. Because some of my maybe anxieties or control issues about like oh, they're going to get dirty. This could happen. And just maybe saying, okay, no, this is okay. How long can a child be out in the cold and playing with the snow before we have to put those gloves on? Right. Can I allow that period of time? Because I know that Andrew, it's my brother's name, so I can use it, wants to get in that mud, and that's going to give him a great experience out here, and that's okay. I don't have to control that so much.
Yeah. Yeah, it really, the risk taking that happens for teachers and children when we're playing outdoors, it's a great experience in expanding ourselves and thinking, okay, normally this would bother me. I wonder why. And let me just push myself outside of my comfort zone a little bit to see if it really is going to benefit the child.
Sure.
And more times have I, when I push myself to that just a little bit outside of my limits, and I'm still careful and I'm still watching, that great things happen.
And you survive.
And everyone survives.
I can do hard things.
Yeah. And, it's similar to that when you're pushing your limits to let children take risks, you're also growing as a person.
Sure.
And practicing not being in control always.
Yeah. Which is probably good for all of us.
It is. I mean, for most of us at least. There might be some of us that
don't have those controls. And what a good example, I feel like, to set for our kids. We always talk a lot about, as the adult, helping keep them safe, helping facilitate their learning, but also, expressing like our emotions, but also when we make a mistake or when there's something we need to learn, because then it shows that we're all in a place of learning and growing all the time, and which is so exciting.
Yeah. I remember seeing a group of toddler teachers in an outdoor classroom, and they were having this struggle amongst each other and this is the teachers that were struggling amongst each other, because the children were taking the sand out of the sandbox and placing it all over the surfaces in the classroom.
Sure.
And some of the teachers were feeling like this was a great idea, and some were feeling like it wasn't a good idea because the sand gets depleted and we don't have limited amounts of sand.
Sure.
So we got together as a teaching team and we decided, how will we approach this as a team? And what this particular group decided, and it doesn't need to be what you would decide as a teacher, but the example is they talked together to find something that they could come up with that would please the teachers, that they could all agree on. And then they used that parameter. So their parameter was, if it looked as if the toddler had a plan, then they were able to move the sand around. If it seemed like they were more willy-nilly with it, then they were going to ask them to keep the sand in the sandbox. I do not know how the toddler teachers determined what was
what was a plan and what was willy-nilly.
Right. But they seemed to get on the same page about it and were able to really support play and a little bit of risk-taking for the children, and did it together. And the children then had parameters that were consistent.
Sure.
It wasn't one adult telling them one thing and another adult telling
them
another.
Which is so important, that consistency. Well, and sometimes as an adult, you think about that, because I always say I have a family full of stackers. Like, everybody likes to see all their stuff. I don't. I like everything neat and tidy.
Put away.
And so I could say, like, the sand is everywhere. However, I think my educator heart is like, oh no, what is that sand? Is that their soup that they're making? Is that part of the wall that he's building? And
is it a heavy thing to carry so that they can feel calm and comforted, right?
Oh, and we forget about that piece, that even just regulating their bodies by like doing heavy work.
Or the texture.
All the great things.
Yeah, so many good things about sand. And challenges for adults in some ways,
It's been so delightful. I'm so glad that you came here. Before I'm very sorry because that Bethany isn't here, because she would have so many great questions. And before we walk out together, I need to show you the most adorable picture of her little Daniel, who's just a little over 1. And she and I went for a walk last week. And when I got to their house, they're doing great about learning outside and letting him explore. The cutest picture you have ever seen in your whole life. This sweet little chunky boy covered from head to toe in dirt and blowing on a daisy. And I think by the time the picture was taken, he started to eat the daisy. But it's so cute and such a wonderful example of him being able to do, just like you said, that risk-taking and that playing and then exploring. And he was just
fully immersed.
Yes. And so he was having the best time. Any thoughts you'd like to leave with educators, families, parents, as like we talk about that that nature-based learning?
I guess be easy on yourself and just take some time in the natural world in whatever way that is for you. If it's a walk around the block on concrete, looking at the beautiful sky, that's nature.
Yeah.
And realize that any amount of nature that we're able to interact with is good for ourselves and for our children.
That's amazing. And remind me again, natureexplore.org.
Yep, natureexplore.org.
And what did you say that packet is called if they're looking for something?
Families Club Kit.
Families Club
And
Kit.
there's a purple tab at the top of the natureexplore.org website. I think it says Family Resources, and you'll just click there, and then you can download it.
And when I said if they're looking for it, I meant when I go and look for it when I get back to my office. Because I've been on that website a ton, and I've never seen that little part, or I've never clicked on that. So I'm very excited to see it.
Yeah.
Well, and thank you so much for being here, Heather. What a blessing. And I've always said Lincoln is just a blessed place. We have so many things to do for families, for children, outdoors, but also for schools. And like early child, there's so many different early childhood programs. And I think there's also such a great community of learning with the educators where people like to connect. And what a blessing to have Nature Explorer and Dimensions be so open to bringing other educators in and helping their programs really connect with outdoor learning based on the research that's been going on for 50 years.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And one of the things I just value about this city is the way that our early childhood community comes together.
Yeah.
In the way that we help each other. And that's only going to benefit the future generations.
Yeah. And it's all for the love of little people, right?
Right. And the little things.
Yeah, and all those little things, right? You've got yourself a job. You can be on the podcast every week. We'd have tied in. Thank you so much, Heather. I appreciate it. And thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
This has been a Messiah Lutheran Ministry production. Subscribe to Messiah Lutheran on Apple Podcasts or anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can also find our worship services and our Sermon Extra podcast by searching Messiah Lincoln on YouTube. Make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of our content. If you'd like to know more about Messiah Ministries, visit messiah.us. We'd love to hear from you as well, so please email us at littlethings@messiah.us.